You're locked into the only podcast for Maine high school basketball. The biggest names, past and present. It's Big Time Hoops, the podcast, right now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. And last week we had one of the best boys coaches around, following that up with one of the best girls coaches around, coming off back-to-back state championships. And we don't know if there's going to be a state championship this year or what's going to happen, but we're just going to see what's going on. We got Nate Pelletier, head coach of the Oxford Hills girls. Nate, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the offer to come on here and talk.
Absolutely. So we were talking a little bit about, what should be going on right now. Normally, you guys would be like at least a week into the regular season, like deep into it, but instead right now, just all uncertainty, right?
Yeah, normally it's starting right up around Thanksgiving, and, you pump out a lot of preseason games, try to figure out what your squad's got for that year and go forward. And right now it's just kind of hurry up and wait. The kids are gearing up, ready to go. We have next week we're supposed to start. Hopefully we can start. It's really going to come down to whether or not, tomorrow we can, every week everybody's sort of on pins and needles, whether or not their county's going to stay green or yellow. And we've been lucky to stay, green for most of the time. We did go yellow once, but, the girls they're ready to go. I think they're, cautiously optimistic right now, just like we are as a coaching staff. But, what I told them the other day, we had a meeting, was that, whether we are yellow or our school gets, shut down for a period of time, we're still going to have basketball. We're still going to have meetings. We're still going to, you're still going to be part of a team. We're going to do, virtual workouts as much as we possibly can. Hopefully the weather can hold out, although this weekend I'm seeing some snow coming, so we'll see.
Yeah, so we see a lot in the professional sports where you win a couple championships back-to-back and you maybe get a little bit burnt out. Is that the case for you guys? Like, you guys have any fatigue? Like, thinking like maybe it's okay that things aren't as normal? Maybe it's a good chance for you guys to kind of to regroup? Or are you guys upset you're not going to get the chance to looking like not getting the chance to actually defend it?
This is one of those years that, you come off of back-to-back state championships and, we lost a lot of seniors and people are sort of just kind of looking the other way for Oxford Hills this year. But I think we had something to prove this year. We have a lot of good, talented players back, and we wanted a chance to make another run at it. And unfortunately this year there's not going to be a state championship. And I have some seniors that it's unfortunate that they don't get to have that chance. But, we're going to do everything we can possible to make this season as normal as we possibly can, to get some games in and really just have the kids be part of that just sort of family atmosphere we've tried to create since the beginning. So.
Yeah, so I had Mike Adams on a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, at what point did the being at home, being able to do things you don't normally do, when did that get old? When were you ready to jump right back into basketball? Like, how quickly were you over COVID? And, might have been nice to take a little break for a little bit, but like at what point we're like, okay, I'm ready to get back into this here?
I think it's, at the end of every season, whether you win a state championship or not, you got to take a couple weeks just to sort of unwind and regroup, because basketball is a grueling season. It lasts a long time. As a coach, at least, we're on the road on my coaching staff constantly scouting games. With the use of technology, it's a little easier now because you can get some game film, but you're constantly in front of the screen watching film. So you need that time. But by the time summer hit and, we really didn't start summer basketball when we normally do, it was sort of like a punch in the gut. We were ready to go, anxious to, play again. And, we did get a little bit of work in this summer with some skills and drills, but it obviously was not the same at all. And really for me, it was, I have a lot of kids that play multiple sports. And at that point, I just wanted them to have an opportunity to play sports in the fall. So I wasn't trying to go above and beyond and get these kids in the gym all the time. It was more of what can we do to give them an opportunity to play sports in general, because it wasn't looking good at all.
What about for you and the coaching staff? What's it been like just with the preseason being what it is? Have you guys kind of dampened expectations? Like, it must normally this time of year comes and you must be ready to go. You have your game plans in, you're doing this, you're doing that. What's it been like on the coaching staff having to adapt as well? I mean, we talk about the kids, but coaches as well. Yeah. It's been a huge adaptation for you guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're all competitive, so we all want a season as much as anybody else. And I mean, it's one of those that we meet as a coaching staff, and you talk about, you got to reevaluate and reassess what your goals are going to be for the season. Because going in, you can't win a state championship, but what are some of those goals you can set for your program so that you can feel like it was a successful year for everybody? And, we've met a couple times and we've come up with some plans, but that's going to, morph throughout the season because, any given week we could be shut down for a week. So it's going to be, one of those roller coaster rides, but we got to do everything we can possible to make it as normal and seem like a season for the kids so that, they can enjoy it. I mean, right now kids are so cooped up that it was going to be terrible if we couldn't have a season at all because the kids need to get out and they need to run, they need to play. And really that's what it's all about.
So you mentioned the county and wanting the county to stay green so you guys can play. And it looks like the season, if there is a season, it's going to kind of be like a county type thing, right? It's going like way back to the beginning, how it used to be, county leagues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How does that look in comparison to normally? Normally, you guys play one of the toughest schedules around, but I'm guessing you guys will probably want to play in some schools that you don't normally play. And does that maybe add like something interesting, something to possibly look forward to, matching up with teams that you guys don't normally have to play?
Yeah, it'll be different. We're going to play still some teams that we normally play. I would assume, with the restrictions, you can still play a county next to you style, but it's got to be regional. So we'll still get to play Everett Little. We'll still get to play Lewiston, I would assume. We don't get to play, right now the team to beat would be Portland. Everybody's talking about them. I don't see us being able to play them. Who knows? The schedule hasn't come out for us yet, but we don't get to play the Cheverus and all those top teams, Wyndham. Bangor, was supposed to be really good this year. It doesn't sound like we're going to be able to play them.
Yeah.
So it's sort of disappointing because, we really wanted to stack ourselves against those teams another year and just show them that we weren't just packing it up this year just because, we lost some seniors. So, but yeah, it'll be fun. It's enjoyable. Some of the gyms we play in, maybe gyms that kids have never been in before. So it's just a different atmosphere. Some of those small gyms are great, and those kids that some of our kids have never really played in those gyms. It's unfortunate that they don't get to, be a part of it when there's a full crowd. Because some of those small gyms, when you pack those gyms, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And that atmosphere, you can't recreate that anywhere else.
Those are the real rowdy, diehard fan bases too. That just pack it, the entire town shows up. Good stuff right
Absolutely.
there.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned, obviously, you guys are the team to beat right now. Everyone will be gunning for you this year, but I want to kind of go back and trace how we got here, how you guys have gotten to the point where you guys are one of the best programs around and you guys just keep competing year in and year out. So let's go back. So where originally do you come from? Obviously, you're coaching in Oxford Hills now, but where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Brunswick, Maine. Graduated high school in '98. And my junior and senior year, Todd Hansen, those were his first years there. So he was my coach, sort of mentor of mine. And then I went to St. Joe's. I graduated from St. Joe's, played basketball there for 3 years, ended up tearing my ACL my sophomore year, tried to pick it up again my junior year, and it just didn't seem right, didn't feel right. I wasn't, ready to put in the time that I needed to at that point. Going into your senior year, your career's about to start. I was getting into teaching. I just couldn't put the commitment there. But Coach Simons was there at that point, and he was great. I talked to him about it, and I said, I knew at that point too. Some of these younger kids coming in were probably better than me. I was on a bum knee still. It didn't really heal the way I wanted it to. And I just said, hey, listen, I'm looking. I got a student teach, and there was a coaching position open at Westbrook Middle School while I was student teaching there. And I just said, hey, can you put in a good word for me? And he was able to do that. And that's sort of where I started my coaching career, during my student teaching at Westbrook Middle School. So it was a weird turn that I took, but it was eventually where I wanted to be.
Was basketball always your thing growing up?
Yeah, it was. Growing up in Brunswick, sort of that's a town where everybody played soccer. So like everybody when they're young played soccer, and I kind of shifted gears and started playing basketball. And it really was essentially my thing growing up. I wasn't that good, to be honest, when I was younger. I sort of only made the middle school team because I was like 6'1". But once that happened and I made the team, it sort of gave me that interest, and I put in a lot more time. And, by the time I was a sophomore, I was 6'4". So, it definitely morphed into me loving the game of basketball and putting a lot of time in.
So obviously you've had a lot of tournament moments and memories as a coach. Do you have any tournament memories as a kid or being in high school? Like we the type of games, follow it, all that stuff?
That's what's funny is I really don't. My Brunswick back then, we were average at best. My senior year was probably the best chance we had to make the tournament during my career. I tore my meniscus my senior year. I missed 8 games during that season. So it never really seemed to work out for me to make the tournament. It was always a goal. The most exciting thing, I started playing AAU, and I got to go to some national tournaments for AAU, and those were really exciting. You sort of, when you start stacking yourself up against some of the kids across the country, it really showed you like what sort of talent was out there. So once I got to coaching, it was, obviously a goal of mine. I want to get to the tournament here. I've never really been, and I want to see what it's all about.
So you mentioned how you pretty much got right into coaching right away as soon as college got done. It was a pretty quick transition. A lot of guys that I've had on that got into coaching, they said they kind of knew. Like they knew when they were in high school they wanted to go to college, you get a teaching degree, go coach right after that. Like were you thinking coaching like way back, or was it something that just kind of happened because things just kind of lined up that way?
No, I was thinking coaching. Once I get into college, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. When I got to that point where I couldn't compete at the level that I wanted to, I still had a huge passion for it. Yeah. And I knew, it's one of those things where like Coach Hansen was a great mentor for me. But when I went to college and I was with Coach Simons, him and I butt heads a lot. But one thing he taught me was the game of basketball and all the little nuances with it. And it really, the things that he would come up with and for me to understand and take that in was a huge piece to me wanting to become a coach. A lot of the things that I do now are things that he sort of did. Now, maybe we do it in a little different variation, but just how you're supposed to play the game. And it was sort of one of those things that I've always wanted to do. I didn't know how I was going to get to where I am now. I'll just be honest with you, I never really thought never in my mind crossed me that I would be a girls basketball coach. Like it just kind of happened. For me, it was just I wanted to coach basketball. Didn't really care where or how. When I got a teaching job right out of college, I was at Edward Little actually for 3 years. And when I got there, Jeff Benson was the AD. And when I got the job, I just said, Jeff, I just want to coach basketball anywhere, anyhow. I don't care. Anything you got open. At that point, he said, all I have is a JV girls job. And I'm like, I'll take it. And I didn't even know really what I was getting myself into. I just wanted a job and sort of just kind of morphed from there.
So you mentioned the Brunswick program being kind of middle of the pack at best when you were there, but you went to a great college program. What are some of the things you took specifically from your time at St. Joe's? Usually when you are around different coaches, different programs, you take a little bit of what they do well and kind of morph it into your style and stuff like that. What did you take from St. Joe's specifically in terms of running a program or how you coach or your approach? What was it?
I mean, I think that anytime you move from, a high school program to a college program, there's a lot that's different. For one, it's just the commitment and, just the level of detail that takes place during a season. Probably the biggest thing I took was, one of my stressors is the attention to detail that every single kid in my program has to have. And I really got that from the college piece because there was so much that was thrown at you in such a little amount of time that you had to know. Really, when I went into college, it was one of those where I was probably an undersized big man. I wasn't quick enough to be a guard, probably wasn't as athletic as anybody on the team, but the one thing that I was really good at was just understanding what I had to do, where I had to be at all times. And some of the other kids struggled with that. So I was able to get minutes because of the details that Coach Simons was looking for that I would pay attention to. And, at that point Carl Howell was there my freshman year. He's probably the best basketball player I've ever been around in my life. His just work ethic in general was far greater than anybody I've ever seen. And Robbie Santacola, who's the coach there now, is the point guard. And I got hit in the face with a couple basketballs many a times, I guess I would say, in the paint, just not ready for the ball. He showed me that you just always need to be ready to catch the ball at any point. So it was a great experience for me to be part of just this winning tradition. And it definitely it made me even more passionate about the game.
So you mentioned details, like just attention to detail, something that you took from you at St. Joe's. When your first gig is coaching JV girls, how hard was it to maybe dumb down expectations? I mean, you're coming from a great program where it's all about details and things like that, and then you can't obviously go into coaching JV girls with the same expectations as what you just went through in college, right? So was that an adjustment period for you? And also just coaching girls. I mean, it's got to be a thing, I would think. I know when I talked to Lon, like he never thought he'd be coaching girls as well, but was that a tough adjustment for you?
I guess for me going into it, I mean, obviously coaching JV, I had to simplify some things.
Yeah.
But my expectations really weren't any different. I coached the girls just like I coached the boys when I was a student teaching at Westbrook. I expected them to do certain things. I expected them to sort of think on their own. But obviously you just have to be, more willing to understand that things aren't going to always go the way you want them to go at the JV level,
right.
And it's a development period. So it was more about developing the kids to become successful, it was a great experience for me. I mean, even at that point, the girls weren't that great of a program in a sense. I think one year we went 4-14. The next year we may have won 6 games, and then the JV group, we may have won 8 or 9 games or something, but. The one thing that I really learned is that the great thing about coaching girls is that they'll do whatever you ask them to do. They'll run through a brick wall for you if you ask them to do it. They're really all about pleasing. And, sometimes coaching boys, it's, they get to their own, they want to do their own thing. They want to be the superstar. They sort of, they're kind of wild in that sense. But girls, they really want to please, and they work just as hard as any boy I've ever coached. The hard part is getting them to at times do some different things, like to see an opening and say, okay, the play's supposed to go here, but coach, there's a layup right here. I should take that. And they're sort of mechanical in a sense where teaching them how to play the game was the harder piece. But overall, it's been a great experience. I've been blessed with a ton of talent. That you're not good without the talent. I don't care how great a coach you are. If you don't have the talent, you're not going to win as many games as we won. So,
I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Mike Adams as well. So we live in a culture now where everyone wants everything quick. They want it now. They want to kind of just jump corners and get to where they want to be, and maybe not necessarily put in the work. How important was it for you in your development, spending that time as a JV coach? And what experience did you gain from that? Taking the time to really start at the bottom and work your way up. Like, what did that JV experience teach you?
I as a coach or a person going into wanting to go into coaching, I didn't understand what really went into it. I thought you just show up and coach and you leave and you just kind of do those things. But those three years that I had, and actually 4 years if you count my student teaching and coaching middle school, I was able to see what it takes to be a head coach. And at that point, after games, every time after games, you got to call the newspaper and talk to a guy for 20 minutes because you got to call on the book, little things like that. Dealing with parents and dealing with, the community and fundraising and all these things that take place that people don't realize that go into coaching. And it's just, there's a lot there. So it was huge for me not, to jump right in. And I'll be honest, I probably got in there even quicker than I probably should have, it was my 4th year and I'm all of a sudden I'm a head coach. And I'm not saying you should wait 10 years. And 4 years wasn't bad. And luckily I had a situation where it sort of worked out that I was able to get a varsity position up here, but it's huge to be able to, learn from, at that point, Val Brown was the coach for a year, and then Bob Donar had taken over. And the great thing about coaching, what I've noticed is that once you get into it, it's sort of just like this big fraternity style thing where coaches, they want to help each other. Like, you see or you hear about coaches, hating each other at times, but it's not like that. Coaches really do enjoy being around each other and talking the game of basketball and just and doing those things. Bob, when I was a JV coach, he gave me his book that was about, 1,000 pages thick. Said, here's everything I've ever had. Take it, use it, do whatever you want with it. I mean, and as a new coach, that's just a great feeling to know that this guy's willing to help you out.
And you mentioned just all the additional stuff you don't think of, but on top of like talking to reporters, stuff like that, dealing with parents, you're also going to two different practices, being there for two different games, right? Being around two different programs like varsity and JV. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, you're coaching your own practice, and then you're going to sit on the varsity bench. And I learned more sitting on the varsity bench than I would have ever learned if I just threw myself into a varsity position. Just because you're there, you experience it, you know all the little nuances that are happening. So yeah, I mean, you're just totally immersed in basketball, and it was an amazing experience for me. I probably couldn't have planned it any better for myself.
And also, you're being on the bench at a program like Edward Little, you're starting to get exposed to the great Southern Maine Class A, women Class A women's basketball at the time, right? So that kind of opened your eyes, like, wow, like there's a good scene down here. There's a lot of talent down here, and maybe I want to pursue a varsity job. Maybe I want to stay coaching girls. Like that kind of opened your eyes to Class A down there in Southern Maine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after those 3 years, I remember telling myself, like, I think I want to stay coaching girls just because, Maine basketball is incredible as it is. So, all of a sudden you get involved. Like, I never had that opportunity to be involved in a tournament. You get involved in the tournament and you see how it goes. Like, it's an incredible experience. Ever since I've taken over this program, like, at no point have I ever really thought, do I want to switch over the boys? Like, it's just never really been on my radar. I just like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I like where I teach. And so it's been a great experience for me.
How'd the Oxford Hills job open up? How'd you line that one up?
So what happened was after 3 years, Craig Gibson was actually the coach at Oxford Hills. And at that point, I was a JV coach, and he got done at Oxford Hills because he lives in Auburn. And at that point, the coach, Jimmy Ladd was the coach, got done, and Craig essentially took the varsity position at Edward Little. And at that point, Jeff Benson moved over to Oxford Hills as an AD, and just sort of the position became open. And I just said, I'll try. For me, it was almost like I just wanted the experience of the interview. I just wanted to see what it was like to interview for a varsity position. And it happened to be that I got the job, and it all worked out. But so we kind of just switched spots in a sense. And by doing that, it sort of created this rivalry between us and Edward Little for a number of years. Greg was at Auburn for, I want to say 9 years or so, and he was just on Mike Adams' bench because his son was playing. So it was good.
Prior to taking the job there, were you familiar with the Oxford Hills community, the basketball program, any experience at all, any knowledge of the program?
The one thing I did know because of coaching, and we coached against him, was that, the program itself was pretty solid. I mean, they were good basketball players. I really didn't know anybody else from Oxford Hills. I did, though, that the year before, my wife and I had bought a house actually in South Paris. So we actually lived in the Oxford Hills School District for a year when I was at Edward Little. So in my mind, I was thinking, maybe eventually I'd want to teach there. I'd want to coach there because I live in that community. And it just so happened the next year it kind of worked out. So right now I have two kids. One's a freshman in high school, one's in middle school, and they've grown up here their whole lives, and we plan on staying here. So it sort of just worked out perfectly for my family.
So for those that aren't familiar with the Oxford Hills community, because my high school coach was from South Paris, I always thought it was funny, a place called South Paris, man. I've never been there. But he actually took us down there. I think it was my senior year. We went to a tournament. We played at Oxford Hills when it was like the Kofi twins. And
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, those guys were good. So that was my first and only time I've ever been to the Oxford Hills community. For those that aren't familiar with it, just go ahead and paint a picture for the folks out there that may not be familiar with the foothills of Western Maine.
Well, what's great about Oxford Hills is we have a large school district. We cover 8 different towns, and it's incredible. Kids are on a bus sometimes for an hour and a half just because of the bus runs. But even though it's such a large school district, it has this small town feel. The community is great. They all sort of gather around each other. So it has the small town feel that you get from some of those smaller schools. And this community comes alive during playoff time. It's actually a pretty built up area. We have the big name Walmarts, and we have all those things. It's not like this small area, but we South Paris, West Paris, Harrison, Norway, Oxford, all those go to Oxford Hills. And so our school, the high school itself, is just over 1,000 kids. So we're a pretty decent sized Class A school. We're never going to drop down to, or we're double A now. We're never going to drop down to A. But that's what's great about Oxford Hills. It's just the community is absolutely amazing. The support we've been given over the last, since I've been there, the businesses are just willing to help, and they want what's best for the kids. And the support I've gotten has just been amazing.
Biggest adjustment for you moving from JV head coach to varsity head coach? You mentioned, being a JV coach, there's a lot more to it than you thought heading into it. What was the biggest adjustment sliding over to the varsity head coach position for you?
For me, when I first started as a head coach, it's one of those things where you feel like I'm the head coach now. I got to make all the decisions. It's all me, because everybody's eyes are on me. And for the first couple of years, that's sort of what it was. And it was hard for me to release some of those duties to, coaching staff. And so that was probably the biggest transition. And what I found was there was just so much that had to be done, and I didn't have enough time in the day to do it. And at that point too, we're still dealing with, you film games, but it's still on just VHS. So the fast forward, rewind, you couldn't just, we use Huddle now. It's friggin' incredible.
Yeah.
It's so easy to find what you want to find, but so the time it took just to do stats, to scout and all that, it just was way too much. So that was probably the biggest transition for me. When I finally, after my third year, started, delegating and actually being a head coach versus just trying to be out there and do it all myself, that's when the program really started to turn the corner for us.
Yeah, I was gonna use that word exactly. I was gonna use the word delegation. I was gonna say you probably have no problem delegating now, right? You try to delegate as much as you can now, right?
Absolutely. Every single coach that's on my bench has a job, and a specific job during every game. And it's crazy what goes into just game planning for a single game. And now that everybody's got a job, it just makes it so much easier. One person's dealing with the defense, one person's dealing with the offense. And it changes year to year. I went a couple of years where one of my coaches did all the subbing, and I didn't have to deal with it. It was just, they were there. That's what they did, and it changes year to year. But just being able to delegate that and take that stress off of me, so that now as a head coach, I can just manage the game and not manage everything else that's going on. And that's a huge piece. One piece too that I'd say with my coaching staff is, it's not normal, but I've had some great assistant coaches and JV coaches, and they all go out and scout with me. Rarely do I see that. A lot of times the head coach is out there, and that's about it. But my whole staff goes. They want to see the team that we're playing. They all have input in the game, and usually we kind of go back and we make a plan. And during the season, it's not as in detail because the games just sort of stack up on each other. But come playoff time, there's a lot of detail that goes into planning, and it's a great piece to have, the staff that I've had.
I've never been a head coach myself, except for the occasional basketball camp, week with the campers type thing. But I would imagine being a head coach, one of the biggest challenges you have is going into a job or taking over a program, saying we're going to do things this way. It's going to be my way. We're going to run my program this way. And then I'm guessing over time, you eventually realize it may not work best that way. Like, what was that moment for you? When did you, I'm not sure how you run the program now, if it's been the same throughout, but do you kind of have a program in place and your players adapt, or do you adapt to the players you have? What's that approach for you? And how long did it take you to kind of find that balance in that?
When you first start coaching, you always have a plan. I came in and we're going to play straight man to man. We're going to, run motion offense, and that's it. And we're going to run the program that way. And at that point, it worked, and we were fairly successful. But when we really started becoming successful and, going to multiple state championships, it was more about me adapting to the players, not the players having to adapt to me. And I know there are great coaches out there that they have a system, they run their system, and that's the only system they run, and they're really good. I've sort of leaned the other way. I'm more about what do I have for talent? What will make them the most successful? I mean, we've gone to a state championship where we played all zone the whole year. We've gone to a state championship, we played straight half court man. That's it. This year and the last 2 years, it's been we're going to press. So some of that, it's been a little nerve wracking at times because as any coach, you become comfortable with the system. So, you're great with a system teaching it, and then you got to relearn it. And I've had to relearn a lot of different offensive systems, different defensive systems. But I think it's just made me a better coach. Now I feel comfortable, no matter who's thrown at me, I've got something that will be effective for them. So I'd say that's more my style. I like to adapt to what's coming in versus them having to adapt to me.
I think something else that's changed over that time period too is just the skill level of these players, right? So back in the day, what coaches told players to work on is a little bit different than what they have now. And I think they're getting these skills at a much younger age, and maybe not being more prepared off the bat, but just, have a bigger skill set, or they can do more things than they could back then. What's been the biggest difference you've seen in terms of just kids coming into the program today versus kids coming into the program when you first took over?
It's funny, when I first took over the program, my thing was, we need to teach kids how to play defense the right way all the time.
Yeah.
And it worked. It was great. But what I found was the offensive skills just weren't there. But what's great now is kids, there are so many different avenues, whether, you hear all the time, the different trainers out there that work on kids' offensive skills. So now it's really about me just trying to figure out, okay, what is these kids' skills and what can I do to make them effective? And how can we get them in situations where they're going to be effective? And really that's what it was this year. It was trying to get matchups so we could get Julia Kobe the ball where she needs the ball. How could we get matchups that Cecilia Dietrich can get in the open court because nobody's going to stop her in the open court? It's just it's a totally different style game, From when I started, it was more of, okay, we're going to run this sort of continuous offense until we get a good shot. And some of that, like you said, was because the kids' skills weren't at such a high level as they are now. Now, don't get me wrong. I had some great skilled players as well. But in general, more of the kids are coming in with those skills than we've ever seen.
I'm guessing one thing that hasn't changed, though, is you still need to teach kids how to play defense, right? That doesn't change, right? I'm guessing that's still probably the biggest challenge.
No, but what I found, though, is these kids, as long as they can come in with the offensive skills and score, probably about, I want to say, maybe it was like 7 or 8 years ago. Probably about 7 years ago, I finally just said, really what needs to happen, I told the kids, like, if you want to be able to play in my program, you've got to be able to score. You've got to be able to handle the ball on offense. You've got to be able to have opportunities to score, because I really, truly feel like I can teach any kid how to play defense, because really defense is just about hard work and knowing where to be and knowing how to use your angles and things like that. Now, what I found with this senior class this year, I thought I was going to be able to teach them to play defense, right off. But it took till their junior year for me to really be able to teach them how to play defense. They love to run and gun all the time. But yeah, I mean, my programs, we don't teach zone defense really. We play zone defense in the at the high school level, but all the way through down to the youth, it's all about teaching them how to play man-to-man defense. That's still there. But a lot of the stress now has been put on the offensive side, because if you're behind the 8 ball on the offensive side getting into high school, it's going to be really hard for you to catch up. Whereas defensively, because it's just hard work and effort and teaching them angles, you can catch up pretty quickly. But it takes years to become a great offensive player.
Yeah. Now, I've only known you for about 30 minutes here, but I could tell in the 30 minutes that I've known you that defense is near and dear to you. You like defense. You like teaching it. As a coach, I'm guessing you love to game plan too, right?
Yeah.
All right. So who are some of these kids or some opponents that you've gone up against over the last 15 years that you love to game plan against just because they were so good? It was such a fun challenge to try to put something together to slow them down. Who were some of those players that kept you up at night?
Oh, man, you can go through the list here. we go back to 2014, and we're trying to game plan against that Macaulay team at that point, and they had a million different offensive weapons. But Ali Clement was it was an impossible guard at that time. You go Gorham Lawn had a stacked team when they had Esposito and they had Holmes and they had all those. And the last couple of years, though, game planning against the Wolf has been tons of fun. You try to throw double teams at her and she finds an open person all the time. I mean, it's just been a tons of fun. And obviously the Portland and even South Portland, going to that state game, obviously our game plan had to be how are we gonna stop Maggie? She's just an incredible player in the state of Maine. Obviously, the Kabantu girl, Amanda, and Motima Jamima from Portland, they're just such an athletic specimens that it really takes a team effort. So it's all about game plan. It's all about the kids understanding what we have to do in certain situations. And what I really found is they really bought into that. The kids in our program have really bought into, all right, so we're going against Holmes. This is where we're gonna double team her from this side because she likes to spin more to this direction type of thing. And they really bought into those things. So it's been a lot of fun throughout the years.
You mentioned some of the great players and some of the great programs, some of the great mini dynasties that we've seen with the Greeley girls, Gorham girls, the Macaulay girls. Yeah. Who are some of the teams that you loved matching up against the most? Because you guys play a tough schedule. When the schedule comes out, do you have certain teams that you look at every year and year in and year out? This is the game. Or is it more so players you get excited for? Okay, I can't wait till we match up against these girls.
I think it's more programs. Throughout the years, the programs that you're going to play against that are going to be tough just because they've always been tough. When I first started coaching, Vashon had great programs at Coney High School, yeah. And those are the ones you always sort of geared up for because you wanted to beat them, and we were lucky enough to beat them a couple times. Whenever you played against Macaulay, just in general, that program has always been top tier when we played them. Lon's done an amazing job at Gorham, so you always circle that game because it's more with the heel points. It's more about can we catch one of those games and get a win because that they're going to win a ton of games. And then our rival has always just sort of been Edward Little. It doesn't matter if we're down or they're down. The games are always just really, really competitive. They're probably the closest school in our area, so that's sort of why it's our rival. So it's been fun. It changes. Portland's been really good for years. So for the last couple of years, so you circle those games. Greeley's always sort of been our nemesis the last 3 or 4 years. We've sort of battled each other, and they've come out on top a couple times. It's still, and they've been close games. But we were hoping to get a win this year, but they just were tough.
You mentioned earlier on about the Maine basketball scene, the coaching scene, just being like a fraternity, and everyone kind of just gets along, shares information, and everyone's kind of cool with each other. But is there a coach that just gets under your skin, and whenever he's on the other sideline, you just get fired up, and you guys go back and forth? Is there that one coach that just gets you fired up, ready to go against you just cannot stand to lose to?
There's not a particular coach that I get fired up about like that. No, I will say that some people say when we were playing, when Craig Gibson and I would coach against each other, the referees always had to bring us together and say, "Hey, you two got to calm down." But what they don't see is before the game we're joking, after the game we're joking. So it's more of just a competitive sort of fire. No, I wouldn't say there's any coach that I look out and I got to go, oh, I got to beat them. It's more about I want to prove something. I want to show that I'm as good as those certain programs. So when you play Gorham against Lon, when you play against Bill Goodman now at Chevrolet, Brody Artis when he's at Wyndham, like all these programs that have been around for a while, and you're buddies with, it's more of your buddies with a lot of these people. So you just want to beat them,
So obviously you guys are the back-to-back state champs right now, but you mentioned getting to a couple state games earlier on as well. So what were some of the tougher losses? And at any point, did you feel like, man, I don't know if we're going to get over the hump? Did you ever have that moment?
Yeah, I did have that moment of bunch. I mean, we went to state championship in 2008 against Deering, and it was the first one in the program. And we came out and just got in a hole. It was bad. We were not ready to be in that game. I was not ready to coach in that game. We got down 16 points, I think, in the first quarter. The good thing is the girls battled, and at some point in the end of the third or start of the fourth, we cut it to 6 at one point. So we battled throughout, but I think that was more of we were just happy to be there. Never been there before. And then in 2014, I had a great group of kids, but we battled one of those Macaulay teams, and we actually started the game great. I think we ended up starting the game up 12 or 13 points. And they came out at halftime and just buckled down, and Ali Clement went off at that point, and there was nothing we could do. And then all of a sudden we're playing in 2017 against Lon's super team there. We did a great job with. So it did feel like at some point I'm like, are we ever going to get a matchup here that we feel like we're actually favored? And because all of those we didn't really feel like we were favored in. And we battled against Lon's team. And I think at one point it was 6 points in the third or fourth quarter, but we just never seemed to get over that hump. But what really changed for us is that once this senior group that came in, they really just had this attitude that they're not afraid to play anybody. And I don't think it was really anything that I did as a coach. It was just their mentality. Their whole lives coming up, they played against older kids, and they just always seemed to battle. And it didn't matter who they were playing. They didn't care. They just felt like they were going to win. And that sort of mentality goes a long ways.
Yeah, and obviously you guys did get over the hump in 2019 and 20. The first one after you won, I mean, most coaches would probably say, "Oh, it feels so good for the kids. I'm happy for the kids. Glad I was able to get one for them." But I'm thinking selfishly, like you have to feel good yourself too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's competitive feels great. I mean, I felt great. It was good to get one under my belt because I felt like you said, if I lose 4, I feel like I'm the Buffalo Bills at that point.
Yeah.
But so you get over the hump, and it's great though. You see how excited the community is and the kids are, and you come home to a huge parade. I mean, the community just came together for that. It was absolutely amazing. So then we gear up for the next year, and that's a tough one sometimes. You win, and now you're thinking, okay, the next year they're saying you're favored, so now you've got to really step it up. And luckily these girls, they never skipped a beat. They didn't have any question that they wanted to win a second one. So it was great. Obviously we had to win some close games. The girls really bought into the game plans we had during the playoffs, and really the state game. It for me it was more of I'm just going to set these kids free and just let them go crazy. And I really felt like at any point we were just gonna run them out of the gym because my kids, we've been training all year to be the best conditioned team in the state, and it really just finally showed in that game.
I'm guessing too, defending the championship is a lot different than chasing the championship, right? And I'm guessing you had to go into your bag of tricks as a coach that you normally or never had to before, having never won a championship, right? What were some of the challenges that you had to face? Like, how did you keep your team motivated? What were some of the challenges that you had to kind of overcome as a coach to keep your kids going in the right direction? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, for us in general as a coaching staff, like I said, the good thing about these kids is they were so competitive that I didn't have to really sort of push them in the direction of we need to win another one. They came in day one saying we want to win another one, and to be honest with you, they wanted to win all 4 years. Their freshman year, they went to a state championship, end up losing to the Lawns team. And, their sophomore year, we end up losing to Everett Little in the regional championship. And I'll be honest, that was I take full responsibility for that one. I made some bad coaching decisions down the stretch, and I told them that. And ever since that day, I told myself I would never not be prepared for situations. And so really going into the season, it was more about how are we going to tweak our offense or tweak our defense, because teams are going to now start watching a lot of our film and try to figure out what they need to do to beat us. So it was just minor things that you could do to make you that more effective. We changed before the state game. I think we changed three different out of bounds plays. We've never run them all year, and the girls just picked up on them so quickly, and we ended up scoring on those 3 out of bounds plays during the game. So there were huge changes for us. But in general, this team they just wanted to win and they wanted to compete. So I didn't have to do a lot of convincing to them, like who cares about last year type of speeches. It was more about what do we want to do this year, and for them it was more about what can I do to leave a legacy in Oxford Hills, and they definitely were able to do that.
You mentioned earlier how you can be the best coach in the world, but if you don't have the talent, then you can only do so much. And you were blessed to have some great talent, and a very special talent in particular. 2020 Miss Maine basketball, Julia Colby. What can you say about her as a player and her transformation from coming in as a freshman to going out as a senior, as a 2-time state champion Miss Basketball? What can you say about her?
I could talk for hours about Julia Colby. The funny thing about her is that if you were to meet her in person, she's really quiet, really reserved type of kid. I mean, and I talk to her dad all the time and say, if we had a lineup in the gym, she probably, if you're just looking at her, she may be the last girl you'd pick on a team. Just her look. And then all of a sudden, you made a huge mistake. But she, as a freshman coming in, obviously was good enough to play on my team. She was our point guard. She had an absolute terrible shot. She coming into her freshman year, she had to get in the gym, and we had to just totally morph her shot and change her shot. And she really bought into it. She every year was able to improve her shooting percentage year to year. And then just, her senior year just became a triple threat because she could shoot from 5 feet behind the 3. She could attack the rim. She was a great defender. I mean, she's one of those kids that, if you want to teach a young youth kid what it takes to be a superstar type of style player, that's what you need to do. I can probably count on my one hand how many times she wasn't in the gym, meaning every single day she's in the gym working on her shot and improving her game. Every single Sunday I'd have to open up the gym for her. And I love doing it, Yeah. For years, I'd always tell kids, hey, listen, anybody that wants me to open up the gym on Sunday, because we don't normally practice on Sundays, I'll open it up for you. And she started taking me up on that offer. And by the end of it, it was sort of contagious. By the end of it, I'd have 5 or 6 kids in the gym on Sunday nights from 7 to 8:30, just because they wanted to be in there working on their shot. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm guessing having a player like that, it kind of sparks the kids coming up after her, right? So I'm guessing like everyone else coming after her just kind of wants to follow her lead, and it's great for the program. But you guys have had great players before that. What is it about your program that has just continued to pump out talented players year after year after year? And it looks like you got some more in the pipeline here as well coming up.
We've got a couple in the pipeline, absolutely. Just coming in, it's always been about, creating that family atmosphere and having kids understand that it's just all about working as hard as you possibly can. A lot of these seniors got to see, some kids going to a state championship when they were younger. And that's what's been great. They all look at that and they say, I want to be there. I want to do that. We constantly have alumni coming back to practices and helping out. So they get to see these kids in the program and understand that once you're part of our program, you're always part of our program. I'm constantly reaching out to past players, just seeing how they're doing. I've got one of my players is right now overseas playing a little bit, and I just today texted and see how things are going. But it's one of those things that once you're part of this family, you can't leave. It's just, that's what it is. And the kids love being a part of it. I tell them anybody that's part of my program is going to be treated like royalty. And that's the first thing. Like if you need me at any time, give me a call and I'm going to help you. And they really, it's just a great atmosphere. Luckily this, with everything that went on and the way that the season ended, we were luckily able to get a banquet during the summer, and just seeing everybody's face and being a part of that was just absolutely amazing, because it was going to be really a hard time if we couldn't celebrate what these girls are able to accomplish.
So you mentioned the family feel around the program. What's the community feel like? I'm guessing you guys have had a great community support too, right? I'm guessing they come to games and they're just as much as part of the program as the players themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have people that don't have a kid in the program at all that have been coming to girls basketball games for years just because they love the competitive nature and how hard they play. The businesses in town are constantly putting things up on their signs, just saying good luck to the girls and the boys. All the sports teams they've been great. Helping all the sports teams in Oxford Hills. You walk around and people come up and just say, "Hey, coach, how you doing?" When you're in town and you're just known as coach, you just kind of, "Hey, how you doing?" It's just one of those things. But for me, like I said, it's just all about the kids and how hard they want to work and being part of this great sort of culture that it's more of what the kids have created. They've bought into a system of we're going to pay attention to details. You're going to be at practice on time, and on time means you're going to be there 15 minutes early. And as much as sometimes they groan about having a 7 a.m. practice in the summer, they show up because they want to be a part of that, and they see that it actually pays off when you're going to do those things.
I feel like when I was growing up, all these high school programs had legendary coaches that were there for like 20, 30, 40 years. And I feel like you don't see that as much anymore. So you've been there for 15, you're coming off back-to-back state championships. Where you at energy-wise? Are you going to be doing this for a while longer? Or did the couple state championships take a lot out of you and maybe shorten that lifetimes of how long you're going to be there? Or how are you feeling? How much longer are you going to go for?
I wish I had that answer. I will say this, that I do have, goals in my life. And, one of those goals at some point, I think I want to be an athletic director. So, that is going to happen at some point in my life. I don't see it happening right now, though. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I'm in that situation where I coached for 15 years, and now I'm at the point where my daughter's in 8th grade. So it's like, I got some more years coming up here, and I have a son that's a 9th grader. So I'm going to make it work. Lon's had to make it work with his son in high school, and he's found a way to make it work. And but no, I could see by no means am I burnt out at all. I'm more excited for this year than I've been, for any year. It's every year. It's like Christmas time. This year's just been really tough because you kind of hurry up and wait and wait and wait and wait. And we're just ready to go. We never really had a summer. The summertime is some of the funnest time because that's when you really get to know your players, because it's a lot more low stress environment. You're working on skills. You're putting kids in situations that maybe during the season they're not in, and we want to see how they react to those things. So not having that has been probably the hardest piece.
There you go. Okay. So before we get up out of here, I'm going to hit on some random fun stuff, and I'm going to see if I can actually get some answers out of you. These may be the hardest hitting questions of the entire episode.
Oh, sweet.
So we mentioned how many great players you've had and how they keep coming back and they're part of the program. If you had to give me your starting 5 in your time at Oxford Hills, could you give me your 5?
Oh man, you know I can't answer that question, especially with all the girls. There's no way that would go over well at all. I'd get like 57 texts.
Yeah.
Why am I not on that list, Coach? What I can tell you is this: I've had amazing players throughout my program, and I could just start naming off a bunch. And it wouldn't be a starting 5, but you talk about Dietrich and Jules. Those two are probably 2 of the top players I've ever had. Tiana Sugars, we're talking Michaela Morin, Anna Winslow, Carrie Pelletier. I mean, I can just keep naming off names of kids that have just been part of this program. Lindsay Fox, it's just, I think I could have a great team. I could probably pick 12 to 15, and we could compete with any team in the state that could pick their best team. I can tell you that.
How about this? So obviously you just won back-to-back state championships. You guys have played in a couple others. Is there one that's the most talented? Like maybe some of your runner-up teams, were they better than the actual state championship teams this year? Can you pick one team maybe as being the best team in your time there?
That would be interesting because some of the teams that I've taken to the state championship are so different.
Yeah.
One was just long and lanky and played zone, and I feel like that team could have caused this year's team's fits defensively. Uh, so I don't know if I could pick. I would have to say this year's team was probably the most talented going in. Like we were able to do more things and put in more things offensively and defensively than any team I've ever had. So I'd probably this year 2020's team's probably the most talented team I've had. But it doesn't mean that those other teams couldn't have competed and even beat this team at times. I mean, they were great teams as well.
You mentioned all the great teams you guys had to go up against in your time there. And right now I'm working on something where I'm doing a decade in review, 2010 to 2020, just going back and looking at the different classes and breaking down programs and stuff like that. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I ran out the numbers. So we got wins, tournament wins. We factored it all in and got like a point system going. You guys are in the top 5. Where do your state championship teams rank amongst some of the other state championship teams of this decade? So you mentioned the Gorham girls, the Macaulay girls. I mean, we'd have to pretty much combine Class A and Double A to just to kind of make it even. So you could throw Greeley in there. Where do your teams rank up against some of these other great teams of the past decade?
You know, I'll tell you what. I would take my team any day against some of those teams.
Yeah.
I actually would really, really, really love to see this year's team face Lon's team from 2017 or face that Macaulay team from 2014. I just think the matchups, it would have definitely been very different for us. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely up there. I personally, as, you know, sort of biased, I'd take us as number 1. You know? That's just sort of how we are. We think we should be the best.
That's the mindset you need to have right there. That's why you guys are a great program. So something else we did this week, the episode's actually coming out tomorrow. We did the girls fantasy draft for 2020, 2021 season. So we had 3 team captains. We threw all the players in a pool, and one of your players was drafted in the top 10. And I want to ask you about her because her name's come up a ton this summer on a lot of people I've talked to. Sierra Carson, is she the next one up in the program? I've heard nothing but great things about Sierra.
Sierra is definitely an amazing talent. The unfortunate piece with her last year, she got hurt. I think that if she wasn't hurt as a freshman, you probably would have seen her play a lot of minutes for us during the year, and we could have been that much better. Not that we needed to be that much better. We won a state championship, but yeah, she's probably the most athletic kid that I've ever coached in my life. She's a kid that, you know, you can say, hey, why don't you just do a backflip? And she'll just do a backflip. Like she's a gymnast. I mean, it's crazy. And she's put a lot of time in her game. She's, you know, worked on her shot. She's probably one of the most aggressive kids, explosive kids going to the rim. So, yeah, I mean, she's definitely one of the top kids in the state, I would say, and she's only a sophomore.
That's the scary thing. Everyone I talked to says she's gotten so much better just over the summer. It's just too bad you guys can't go out and defend your state championship. It's got to be.
We wanted to. I mean, we really, really wanted to. We wanted to shock the world and say, hey, listen, we got some more kids in the pipeline. Because I'll tell you what, the girl that doesn't get talked about much for us is Cassidy Dumont. She was sort of our third point guard for the last 2 years, and she's a senior this year. And it's really unfortunate for her that she doesn't get to have that chance to make another run. But she's just a great kid overall, individual, and she's, you know, one of those kids that helped us win a state championship. So putting her as a point guard with Sierra and a lot of these other kids that we have, I mean, we would have been definitely surprising some people. I put it that way.
Definitely. So I'm going to get you out of here on this one. The girls' game has always been great in Maine. You look at the players that are playing D1 now and just playing college basketball in general. They're all over the place. They're doing great things. It's been that way for a while, but doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. It still lags behind the boys. What can you say about where the women's game or the girls' game is right now in the state of Maine? Well, what would you say? Are things in great hands? Are things getting better? Where's the game at in general for the women or for the girls here in the state right now?
I think over the last 10 years, the girls' games, you know, skyrocketed. You look at some of the kids that have been able to go to these top name schools, and just it's incredible to see that the hard work that the girls do in Maine really has paid off. You see Anna DeWolf out there, you see Mackenzie Holmes out there, you know, Julia Colby's got a full ride to University of Southern New Hampshire. Like you see all these kids now. So I really think the game itself is great for girls in the state of Maine. What can improve? I mean, I just think that what the kids need to realize is the amount of time that it's going to take. Those kids that were able to go big time, it really is the amount of time that you have to put into the gym and get the work ethic in. A lot of kids just feel like they can get in the gym, 1 or 2 times a week and they're going to be good. But all these kids that we're talking about, they're gym rats. They're in the gym constantly, 24/7. What's great about the state of Maine too is the coaching. When you go to these clinics, there's coaches there all the time, and everybody's just trying to learn the game and evolve with how the game's changed.
Right.
The game itself it's a huge 3-point style game now, attacking, fast paced, which is great to watch. A lot of our fans come to our games just because of the pace of the game that we play at right now, and I think that's really helped us a lot. Get these kids ready to play at the next level. It's not really that slow down style game anymore.
I like it. Before we get up out of here, I always give my guests a chance to have the floor to say final piece. If you have anything you want to say, if there's anything at all you want to get off your chest, this is your chance to say it.
No, I just really appreciate you having me on. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and I think you're doing a great job, promoting the game of basketball in the state of Maine. And I just want to thank you for that. Because it's not every day that you get that happening, and you're doing a great job with it. I really, really wish that we could have a season this year. I just want everybody to stay safe, do the best they can, and do everything they possibly can to give all the athletes an opportunity to play in some sort this winter, because they need it, with all the mental health that's going on because of COVID. And stay safe, everybody, and you keep doing a great job, Tom.
Thank you. And us as fans, we want basketball too. That's how a lot of us get through winter is basketball. We need basketball. It's going to be a long winter without it. But
luckily with us, we have the huddle program and the camera. So if we do have games, we'll be able to live stream them and stuff. So that'll be good for our fans. So.
Definitely. That's the nice thing about you. You talk about technology being easier as a coach, as a fan too. You can take in a lot more basketball than you could before. So absolutely. Shout out to Nate for coming through on Big Time Hoops, the podcast, the 2-time defending state champion, head coach of the Oxford Hills girls program, and they're not slowing down, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to be a program to record for a while here. So thanks to Nate. Thank you for watching tonight's episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. Make sure you're checking out all of our previous episodes out there, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time with another Big Time episode of Big Time Hoops. We'll see you.